I'm a storyteller. I work with individuals, with organizations, with neighborhoods to identify what their issues are, both fear and desire, and to craft the story that can give them results.
This is Hourglass, the podcast for United Way of King County in Seattle. Coming up, a conversation about storytelling. We chatted with Loren Niemi, a lifelong storyteller and founder of the Minneapolis-based American School of Storytelling, about topics including his 4 storytelling techniques for social change and whether those techniques have been used to address an issue that our county has been grappling with for years: homelessness and housing. We also chatted with United Way Chief Impact Officer Regina Malveaux, our Senior Director of Philanthropic Engagement Rubin, and our marketing strategist Kayla Dunn about how our organization uses storytelling to convey the impact of our work beyond facts and figures. We will also spotlight our free summer meals program and our community partnership kit offerings. I'm your host, Joe Burris. Thanks for tuning in. At United Way of King County, we've provided more than 1 million free home grocery deliveries to our neighbors since the delivery program began in 2020. This year, we've processed more than 12,000 tax returns from January through April and helped people access more than $18 million in credits. And last year, we helped 2,300 families stay safely housed through our coordinated approach to housing stability. Behind those numbers are individuals and families of every background, from the single parent in North Seattle struggling to make ends meet, to the Renton Technical College student with an empty stomach and wallet, to the family on the east side that's one financial setback away from eviction. We share the stories of their strength and stick-to-itiveness, how they turned to us sometimes when all else failed, and how we help them stay housed, put food on the table, and secure the finances to make ends meet. Many of us at United Way can relate to their stories firsthand. Often we see our history in their struggles. And as we work alongside communities to build an equitable future for everyone, as we meet with donors, advocates, and lawmakers, and as we craft blogs, post on social media, or air episodes on this podcast, we share stories about our neighbors, our partners, and our grantees in a way that we hope conveys our belief that we're all in this together, and together we can address our greatest challenges. Sharing such stories is aptly called storytelling. It's a means of communication that's been around for thousands of years, but has gained popularity recently with the growth of digital media. We see storytelling as a powerful tool for conveying the impact of our work beyond facts and figures. We can point to research from the Stanford Graduate School of Business, which found that information delivered with facts and stories is more than 20 times more memorable than just facts alone. We align with like-minded storytellers, particularly those who serve and advocate for their communities. And to that end, we recently traveled to Canyon, Texas for the National Storytelling Network's annual conference. Launched in Jonesboro, Tennessee in 1975, the National Storytelling Network comprises more than 1,000 individuals and affiliate organizations and embodies storytelling through practices such as story slams, oral history readings, art performances, workshops, and advocacy. Among the conference's workshops was Storytelling Tools for Social Change, hosted by Loren Niemi, a lifelong storyteller, author, and founder of the Minneapolis-based American School of Storytelling. Niemi's storytelling prowess is rooted in 1960s work with community activist Saul Alinsky, in anti-war organizing, and in the creation of the Public Policy Project to help low-wealth immigrant and communities of color effectively tell their stories. Niemi's workshop at the National Storytelling Festival focused on 4 storytelling techniques for supporting social change: creating storytelling circles, collecting oral history, framing advocacy messaging, and delivering public testimony. He offered real-life stories on how communities of people from different backgrounds and perspectives often used the four storytelling techniques to craft messages that persuaded lawmakers to bring about changes that their neighborhoods desired. Hourglass sat down with Niemi after the workshop for a conversation about storytelling and whether his four storytelling techniques have been used to address an issue that our county has been grappling with for years: homelessness and housing. We also chatted with United Way Chief Impact Officer Regina Malveaux, our Senior Director of Philanthropic Engagement Gary Rubin, and our marketing strategist Kayla Dunn about how our organization uses storytelling to convey the impact of our work beyond facts and figures. We begin with Niemi, who spoke about the first time he coined himself a storyteller.
So I'm at a conference in 1978, and a lovely woman by the name of Joy Martin is sitting across from me, and we're sipping martinis, and she also works for the city of Minneapolis, and she turns to me and she says, "What the hell is it that you actually do?" And without really thinking about it, I say, "I'm a storyteller. I work with individuals, with organizations, with neighborhoods to identify what their issues are, both fear and desire, and to craft the story that can give them results." And as soon as I said it, I realized that A, it was true. It was exactly what community organizing is on the most fundamental of levels. And B, I recognized that there was more involved there. The word storyteller became a liberation. The next few years in 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, I had a series of experiences that were very much storytelling experiences. In 81, I got a residency in northern Minnesota. I got to admit, one of the best gigs I've ever had in my life. The Minnesota Humanities Commission paid me good money to sit in bars and cafes and church basements and do oral histories with folks around the question of how was the culture of northern Minnesota changing. And the change was largely from industrial to tourism. And so I documented and commented on the culture, and lots and lots of storytelling there. In 1983, in the Heart of the Beast Puppet and Mask Theater, had a project called the Circle of Water Circus, which went from the headwaters of the Mississippi to New Orleans, 6 months, 24 formal performers, 42 people on the tour. And I served as the ringmaster and as the tour manager for that project. That project, if nothing else certified me as a storyteller, that project did. In part, I wound up writing a memoir, but the facts in the memoir made such little sense, so I had to add fiction to it, and it became my novel Circus Rex. Okay. So all of that happened, and then, 1998, I received a Bush Leadership Fellowship, the Bush Foundation in the Twin Cities, and I used the fellowship to, basically I went to Chicago with the intent of researching how the interaction of storytelling to community development and economic development, how it is that communities go about telling their stories in a way that builds community or builds identity, right? And I did that for a couple of years. And in 2001, just before 9/11, I was asked to come back to the Twin Cities and to basically to manage a project in how to engage immigrant communities of color, low wealth folks. And I always use that term, low wealth. Not, the issue is not that there isn't money, because there's lots of money that flows through the community. The issue is that the money doesn't stay, right? And so, make that distinction. But anyway, I to manage this project of providing some civic engagement training for those populations. And that began basically 10 years of working with a number of folks, one of whom was a guy by the name of James Trice, who became my active partner in doing the public policy project. James and I, over the course of that 10 years, worked with 8 or 9 different organizations around the Twin Cities. We must have taken 200 or 300 people through the training. Some of whom wound up running for office, got elected. I can point to legislators. I can point to city council people. I can point to school board people who because of us, literally saying, this is how government works. This is how engagement works. This is why it's worth voting. This is how you tell your story. Actually produced leadership results. So most of my life has been this parallel of there is that, which is storytelling in the more formal sense of learning, teaching, performing, producing, writing about stories. And then there's also this political side, right, which is a very particular kind of storytelling. If you want to run for office, there is a story you have to tell. Most people wind up telling several stories, sometimes badly, for various constituencies. And then the question becomes, how do you reconcile the stories? Also, I spent a period, when I was doing the political work, we spent a period of time as lobbyists. The fundamental job of a lobbyist, without any question, is to tell a particular kind of story to produce a particular kind of result. And it is the consistency, and that is in fact the essence of lobbying. It isn't that you visit the legislator once; you visit the legislator many times, have many conversations, either about the same issue or about a variety of issues. You build relationships, and you know what they're interested in, and they know why you're standing at the door. So
great. Now, I want you to talk about your storytelling for community building and social change, which you did yesterday. That was just so fascinating. What are the origins of it? How has it been developed over time, and where and what ways has it been used?
Well, what I'm teaching when I'm teaching the storytelling for organizational change comes out of my experience working with the Public Policy Project, out of my fundamental community organizing experience. The roots are there, and the various pieces of it represent various kinds of projects we've done over the years where, it's like, here's the challenge. How do you resolve the challenge? Where is the story? But also, how do you document or how do you replicate the process? So I've been blessed in that I've been able to do many different kinds of projects. And I've been very diligent about what we did, how it worked, and to begin to put them together in sequences that would help someone, right? So if you want to do social change, you don't start with the end. You start with, where's the community? Where is the joy? Where is the challenge? Right. And so once you identify those two components, you can figure out, what do we do to build joy, and what do we do to frame challenge in a way that can be moved forward. So much of what I'm focused on in teaching storytelling and social change is in fact on mechanisms which are designed to help amplify ordinary life, everyday life, and to celebrate, the joy of community. To celebrate, every neighborhood, every community has some things that they share, and the question is whether or not they're aware of it, and whether or not they have a way of sharing it.
Okay.
So. It's like you go into a small town and they have their annual festival, whatever it is. And a lot of times if you're an outsider, you look at it and you say, geez, that's not much. The Raspberry Festival. Okay, fine. One of my favorites in northern Minnesota, Two Harbors, the Smelt Festival. What is the Smelt Festival? We're gonna go stand at the edge of Lake Superior, and we're gonna catch these little fish, right? And we're gonna catch them in buckets and baskets, and then we're gonna bread them up with beer batter and fry them up, and we're gonna eat them like French fries until we can't stand it anymore. And what's left, we're gonna use as compost for the garden. And it's like, on the one hand, you say, geez, that's not much. But on the other hand, it is such a joyful experience for people. It it is something that the whole community can participate in. It's, these events, these annual rituals deserve to be celebrated, deserve to be acknowledged. They are not necessarily for tourists. They are primarily for the people who in that community to say, this is something which is ours.
Right. So, where I'm from in Florence, South Carolina, they have a pecan festival.
Yeah.
Same
right,
thing. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Right. And then they're often associated with agriculture. They're often associated with, seasonal things. Right. So,
I want to know if you can just break down the parts of a storytelling for community and social change. Story circles, oral history, messaging, and testimony.
Right. So, that's sort of, if we were going to talk about the ascending order of specificity, right? So even before we get to what we were just talking about, the bottom line is community ritual. First, one of the first things that we want to do is we want to identify what are sort of the community rituals that are in a place. From there, we can go to story circles, which ask people to testify to their experience around a particular question. And the particular question should be open-ended. They should be specific. They should not be suitable for simply yes or no.
Right.
They should invoke people to talk about their emotions and their experience and their, So it's a technique and a process to not only help break down barriers of understanding between people who may not necessarily have a conversation, but also beginning to collect what is the wisdom of the community or what is the response to whatever the question is, whether the question is based on opportunity or based on challenge. So from that community storytelling circle process, you can amplify what happens by doing oral history. Okay. And with oral history, again, we're not just simply looking at a random group of coming together around a particular question, but we're beginning to look at what is the depth of people's experience. Where are the strengths in a community? What has been preserved? I did an oral history project one time where I got to interview the guy who had been the last lamplighter in St. Paul.
Wow.
Right. And quite literally, I had to say to him, because what did you do? And he described what he did as a lamplighter. And the job was pretty simple, highly repetitious, incredibly risky. Right. And in doing oral history interviews, you usually do two of them. You do one and sort of to cover the generals, and then you go back and you do one that sort of to amplify, right? And when I went back for the second interview, he had found his lamplighting equipment, right? He had been a teenager when he was a lamplighter, and he had saved the stuff in his attic for 50, 60 years, before I asked him, well, what is it that you do? And he had gone and found it. He brought it down and he showed it to me and we talked about it. And, that kind of process helps really build understanding. Right. So from there, if you are working around a particular issue, then you move to messaging. And the messaging is, again, how do we find something that is metaphoric, symbolic, evocative, easy to say, easy to understand or repeat, something that has, when we can take from the small kernel of what the message is, programs, policies, experiences, you can build from it or you can build on it. And then once those messages are developed, they begin to have a life of their own. What oftentimes, then we go to sort of the most rarefied part of it, which is when a community is asking to respond to either by initiation or by response to a particular policy or program or opportunity, you wind up inevitably having to do testimony. And whether it be with some kind of an governing body or whether it be legislature or city council. And when you go to do testimony, what you're telling is a highly compacted kind of story. testimony is usually time limited. So if you've only got 3 minutes or 5 minutes, you have to stuff a lot into it. And I remind people always that the objective is, there are two objectives in testimony. One is to make the human connection, because what people vote for is not data, but relationship, right? And the second thing is and again, that relationship often is, I'm a constituent of yours, and if you want my vote, you will be sensitive to what I'm about to say. And the second thing is that the testimony is designed to elicit questions, right? So in 3 minutes, what I can do is sort of hold out the bait. And what I want to do is have a legislator then say, tell me more about that. How did that come about? And so when they ask the question, that not only gives me more time, but then we can begin to get into the detailing. So that's sort of the progression that we teach, or I teach. And it's based on having observed experience for years and years and years. So.
Great. So in the Seattle-King County area, we've been grappling with the issues of homelessness and housing.
Right.
In what ways has this model been used to address that? Anywhere that we've been where homelessness and housing specifically took on the storytelling and community change?
So the example I would use is in the early 90s in Minnesota, Hennepin County, which ran the detox, right, had a 150-bed detox unit. The state was threatening to pull their license because of some problems they had with management and with treatment of patients or treatment of individuals. So they simply closed down the program and flooded the street with chronic alcoholics. When we did the data collection, what we found out was that there was 14,000 some people went through detox in a year. Most of them went through once. One trip to detox was all you needed to know that we weren't going to get drunk like that again, or we weren't going to be part. But for 200 some people, they did detox 70 or more times a year. Well, if you think about it, every detox hold is 72 hours. In effect, what it meant is that they were living at detox. And so we went through a process with several communities, with the Phillips community, with the Elliott Park community, with the Stevens Square community, all communities that were being flooded by these unhoused chronic alcoholics, right, to work together to present an alternative to the county. And the alternative involved two things. One of them was that what at that time was a pretty controversial concept. We're going to offer wet, dry housing. We don't care if you're drunk or not. We're going to provide, we want you to have shelter. And we're going to train the police that when they come to pick you up because you passed out on the street, rather than taking you to the hospital or rather than taking you to the jail, we're going to take you to your wet, dry housing facility where you can have an evaluation as to whether or not you should be in the hospital or whether or not you should be in your room sleeping it off. That very concept is a hard one for many people to get their head around. One of the things we did is Hennepin County had what often many counties have, their truth and taxation hearings. And we identified a number of rather articulate chronic alcoholics, and we worked with them on shaping their testimony, and we took them to the suburban truth and taxation hearings. And basically they testified. And what did they testify? They testified, I'm a chronic alcoholic. You can't be expected to do anything about that. I am homeless. You can be expected to do something about that. If you don't want me in your neighborhood, if you don't want me here, you will support the county's provision of wet, dry housing services. It was, it's a fundamental threat, but it worked.
It worked.
It worked, because white suburban neighborhoods go, man, we don't want to have chronic alcoholics here. It's the whole NIMBY concept.
Right.
But what you do is you shift it to saying, if you don't want X, then why not support Y? Right. And as a consequence, the couple of 230 units of wet-dry housing was developed in 2 different locations. Right. In one location, it was primarily for the general population. In another location, it was exclusively for the Native American community so that they could begin to incorporate Native American values and practices in the response to the chronic alcoholic.
At United Way of King County, we see storytelling as a powerful tool for conveying the impact of our work. For this episode of Hourglass, we chatted with United Way Chief Impact Officer Regina Malveaux, our Senior Director of Philanthropic Engagement Gary Rubin, and our Marketing Strategist Kayla Dunn about how our organization employs storytelling and some of their most memorable stories. We begin with Kayla, who spoke about our use of storytelling on social media platforms.
With social media this day and age, everyone is vying for attention and time. I mean, there's just so many different things that are reaching for people's attention all the time. So when it comes to storytelling with social media, the visual component is just so vital. Mm-hmm. We need strong visuals, photos of people. And it's also taking a moment to think through, as you're uploading these photos, how they blend together. And as people are swiping through, what kind of story even just the photos tell. Mm-hmm. Because people aren't always reading the full caption or even reading the text that's on a slide. So that visual piece of trying to paint the whole picture of an event or a volunteering day through pictures is super important, in addition to that caption and that first line, and trying to get people to read and understand the context of all of the work we do. It's a tricky balance in being concise to capture people's attention quickly and also offering all the context for everything we do.
Okay, well, I think you may have answered the next question I have, but the most and least effective ways to tell stories on social media.
It's tricky. I feel like this is something I'm still learning a bit because I came into this role at United Way doing social media last summer. So it's been a little bit of A/B testing and playing around to see what people interact with, what they engage with, and what our audience wants to see. But from what I can tell, the least effective way to tell stories on social media is through a single slide or something that doesn't have visuals. It's really hard to capture people's attention. Yeah, when there's no image, it just people swipe by it. We get less views, significantly less interactions. So that visual piece in regards to social media is super critical, making sure there's a strong visual component to it. Making it ineffective when there's not a strong visual component, but then our best stories that we've shared have those strong visuals, like a really great photo of someone, a video of a volunteer event, a soundbite from someone at a volunteer event or anything that's just, it's visually capturing and it's understandable quickly. Because another thing that I'm always kind of combating on social media is our audience, because about 60 to 75% of viewers on every single post don't follow us. Wow. So it's fair to assume, that this could be the first time they're seeing anything from United Way of King County. And if we're entirely foreign to someone, it's important to balance repeatedly explaining who we are so they have context, but also not just becoming dull and repeating it over and over and over. Just trying to find that sweet spot between over-explaining and under-explaining, having context for people who aren't familiar with us, but also giving nuance for those who are deeply engaged and aware of our work.
So, Gary, talk about the use of storytelling in your work.
Joe, storytelling is at the heart of my work and the work of the team here. The fundraising team at United Way of King County. it's so important because the numbers are astronomical. I mean, I can talk to folks all day about the 15,000 people we have on rental assistance wait list, the 5,000 we have on food delivery wait list. Those numbers are so important and they're so overwhelming. But if I can attach a story to it, then it provides context. That's one story out of 15,000 stories or 5,000 stories. So it's great for the conversation, but also provides context to some sad and overwhelming numbers.
And Regina, talk about the use of storytelling on our community services team.
Well, we know that in King County, many of our neighbors are struggling with affordability of both food and housing, and the impact that our team sees from the really vital dollars that donors to United Way help us put back into community is really heartening. We know that supporters and even elected officials often turn to us to learn about what our neighbors are experiencing and to help drive the solutions that we all really, really do hope for. The team and I are really grateful for the opportunity to share those stories that come from those who've been helped with the support of United Way and our donors.
Okay, so I want to know if each of you can give examples of some of your most memorable stories doing our work.
One really important example would be Emma, an 85-year-old who told us, "I'm 85, I can no longer drive, and I really dislike asking someone to take me grocery shopping. So your food boxes have really been a blessing." Emma has been served by United Way's home grocery delivery program, which partners with local food banks, DoorDash, and Amazon to help get food to those like Emma who are struggling with food insecurity and are unable to get to food banks on their own. We're really proud of the fact that with the support of United Way donors and corporate partners like DoorDash and Amazon, we've just had our 1 millionth delivery since the pandemic, and are really appreciative of how much impact the team and our community partners are having.
One was working with one of our partner nonprofits, and I remember talking to a boy who might have been 8 years old about his situation he finally got into. At this time, some temporary housing. And I remember talking to him, and I just asked how long he'd been in this housing situation and what life was like before then. And he spoke just very straightforward, nonchalantly at 8. And he said, "Well, we lived in my mom's car for 2 years until we were able to find housing," and talked about that experience. But he talked about it no differently than I might talk about, "Oh, I went to college for 4 years and this was my experience." There was no emotion attached to it. That was what he knew, and that was what he had. It was heartbreaking to hear that.
Oh my goodness, it's such a hard question. I've been thinking about it. We put out a lot of content, at least 3 posts a week across the different platforms. And like I said, they shift a little bit. So about 9 posts a week. But ones that really stand out to me, honestly, our Spotify Wrapped post from last December. I think that was a really kind of good example of using data well in storytelling, because it's really just a slide of our annual stats, but it's on trend and it's told in a way that's like fun and engaging for people who might not be familiar. So that got a lot of traction and was fun to do. There's some trending pieces similarly, like the baby photo trend where you show someone now and who they were as kids. Like, it's a fun way to bring levity to our work and show these leaders, as who they were growing up and just kind of the big picture moments. Yeah, so the trends are fun, but I also love the pieces where we dive more into our work and deep dive informative carousels about, the post-secondary basic need housing summit, where that was the first time that's ever been done. And we led that project. Emily Portillo led that project, and we got to really share her story and the need. And that did really well on LinkedIn. People really engaged with that information. So it's hard. We put out a lot of content. Things move so fast in the world of social media. Sometimes, as soon as something's up, you're on to the next thing. But it's been an exciting year, a really exciting year.
We wrap things up with Loren Niemi, who spoke about his American School of Storytelling, which he says is a program of classes, performances, and resources dedicated to oral storytelling and other narrative art forms.
So the American School for Storytelling began as a pandemic project. The program I was with at St. Thomas came to a sudden halt in the pandemic because we tried to make it work, and it was like it didn't function well. So they just let it go. So I'm wandering around the house, and my partner Christine says, "What do you want to do?" And I say, "I want to keep teaching." And she says, "Well, let's do it online." So we began teaching online. But to her credit, one day she was looking on Craigslist and she saw an ad for a space close to where we live, 4 blocks away. So we went and we looked in the window, and I said, "Geez, that's a really interesting space." And we met with the landlord, and we worked out a deal, and we moved in 2023. It is a very small, funky space. We have an 8x8 stage. We have 36 seats. We can expand it to 42. We have a little area for classroom for teaching. We have bookshelves for books we have books for sale, and we have books for free. And come and take which one you want. Part of the books for sale is that when we have readings with poets or storytellers, or if they have product, we ask them to leave some product with us, which we'll be happy to sell for them. And so many people do. Many people are happy to do that, So that was sort of the origin of the concept. But the concept really is that a long-term commitment on my part, again, to support oral narrative arts and practitioners of the oral narrative arts. It is not necessarily about making money. It is not necessarily about developing stars. What it's about is offering a broad range of classes and workshops, both in person and online, and performances that say, stories matter, poetry matters, singer-songwriters matter. All of these people are speaking to what it means to be human. All of these people are speaking to, whether it be traditional stories or personal stories, are speaking to, this is how we are, and this is what we can aspire to, or this is where we came from. So,
okay. And lastly, how might our listeners learn more about your work and take part in your programs?
Well, one of the easy ways is that you go to the website, American School of Storytelling, AMSStory, AMSSTORY.com. Go to our website and take a look at what we offer. We list on the website the online programs, the in-person programs. We list the performances. All of that is available. We have a monthly newsletter where we give you the same information, if in a slightly different way. I'm happy to talk with anyone around the work we do. And I will say that we, upon occasion, have done workshops other places. We can travel. We were willing to travel. I've done several workshops in northern Minnesota. We've done workshops a couple of other places. Happy to do that, right? Half story will travel.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Loren Niemi, for taking time on our podcast today. Really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
For more information about the American School of Storytelling, log on to AMSSTORY.com. That's AMSStory.com. United Way of King County's free summer meals program is in full swing. This year, United Way is working with partners across the state to expand access to summer meals and connect families to free, nutritious food. In King County, United Way is supporting partners by launching new sites, strengthening outreach, and testing creative strategies to reach more kids and families. Statewide, we're focused on expanding access in rural communities, By working with partners to launch mobile meal routes, home delivery programs, and other flexible models where traditional meals aren't always feasible. United Way works with partners across our county to operate nearly 200 free summer meal sites that provide lunch, a snack, and sometimes breakfast or supper daily. United Way's goal is to ensure that every child has access to food during the summer months. For more information, log on to freesummermeals.org. If you're a company interested in volunteering and team building, consider United Way's Community Care Kit opportunities. Community Care Kit offerings are packages loaded with essential items for King County residents based on needs identified by neighborhood-based organizations. Assembling and distributing those kits is part of a volunteer project known as Kit Builds, and we've hosted kit builds for companies and organizations in our area for more than a year. Among the organizations that have taken part in kit builds are Amazon, the Gates Foundation, PACCAR, and Microsoft. For information on how you can sponsor a community care kit offering opportunity, log on to uwkc.org, click on Get Involved, click on Volunteer, and under Group Volunteering, click on Learn More. At United Way of King County, we are working side by side with communities to build an equitable future for everyone. Hourglass United Way is a podcast that highlights how we and our partners spend time making a difference in our communities. Our work is made possible by generous donations from people like you. Please send all comments and suggestions about our podcast to hourglass@uwkc.org. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn via @UnitedWayKC. And to learn more about our work or to support United Way, log on to uwkc.org. I'm your host, Joe Burris. Thanks for listening. Until next time.